Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Berkeley County Board of Education, Tuesday, January 14th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time to declare that a quorum is present and that the media has been notified. We need to approve tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion and a second for the approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Obie. Thank you, Dr. Etheridge. There is a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. 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 The agenda is approved with a unanimous decision. Now, would you please join us in our opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 10th, 2014. Do I have a motion and a second for the approval of minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting December 10th, 2014.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Etheridge has made the motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Obie has provided a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of December 10th, 2014, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The minutes of the regular meeting of December 10th have been approved. Now we will move to agenda item number 5, citizens' comments. We do have one citizen comment tonight. Mr. Healy, if you could please approach the podium, we'll read the citizen comment procedures. In order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, we ask that you honor the following guidelines. Stakeholder comments are welcomed and encouraged. However, the board will not take immediate action on public comments at this meeting. Any person wishing to address the board must register prior to the meeting. Comments must be regarding programs, policies, or procedures. Comments regarding an employee or student other than the child of the speaker will not be heard in public session. Groups addressing the same topic should select one speaker. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The board chair reserves the right to allot additional time or halt public comments that do not adhere to the guidelines. First comment tonight is Mr. Healy from Hanahan, South Carolina. Mr. Healy will be speaking about the Tanner Elementary School site. Mr. Healy, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much. I have a little bit of a cold, so if you don't understand me, just stop me and I'll repeat. Respected members of the Berkeley County School Board, fellow residents of Berkeley, and visitors, I've come tonight to respectfully ask you about the challenges with the location of proposed new Hanahan Elementary School site. I've been actively following this, and I'm very disappointed in how this is being handled. Where do we go from here? I look at all of you, as well as the Hanahan City Council, as leaders in our community. However, I do not see the leadership that is expected. Leaders need to view all the options and select the correct one based on input from all those involved. What I have seen, though, the last couple of months is 2 separate groups with their own agendas. This is definitely not the way for leaders to act. I'm not here to change your mind to do it my way, but to implore that you team up with the Hanahan City Council and to come up with the best solution for not only our children, but also the taxpayers of Berkeley County. As I sent an email to all of you requesting a joint meeting with Hanahan City Council members, I also sent that request to them. That email was sent in December, yet where do we stand? We stand at an impasse with a pending court involvement. Wouldn't it have been easier for a meeting with an arbitrator to get this resolved? After all, that is what leaders would do. What message does this send to the community you represent, as well as the children? Aside from the money already spent on Bowen, why do you see the Bowen site as the best choice over the new parcel of land offered at Williams Lane? I feel as if you have been offered prime real estate on the Williams Lane site, which would fully fit the bill better, but you have ignored this. You have stated there is another site at Bowen that can be built on without the need for a PUD or a variance put in. But I am concerned this is a misconception or a miscommunication. The other site is actually two separate sites, of which neither is large enough to put our proposed school. And they are not contiguous space, but in different locations within that development. Another major concern is that you are not looking in Williams Lane because as a school board, you are upset with the fact that this would be deeded land, stating that Hanahan children will go to the school first before any other children outside of Hanahan. If this is true, then the school board should be admonished for not being factual when selling the bond issue to us. We were told that Hanahan children would get to go to Hanahan schools if this issue was passed. Well, it's time to show integrity and live to the promise you gave us. Instead of working with city officials in Hanahan and the residents, you have decided to issue a lawsuit. Do you all realize that this is both a frivolous lawsuit and you are punishing not only the taxpayers of Hanahan, but all of Berkeley County? Who do you think eventually pays for this? Are we fixated on only one site, or are we willing to look at all available sites and do the best thing for our children in Hanahan? At this point, I, along with probably most residents, would like to see this resolved as quickly as possible. With that said, we also would like it resolved with the best outcome for all involved. From all that has been transpired to date, I would probably be correct in stating that the earliest this school would be ready, regardless of location, would be August 2016. Let's get beyond all differences and have the meeting. Let's work as a team, which is expected from all taxpayers. Let's do the best for the children, residents, and taxpayers. Everyone involved now needs to step up to the plate and act as responsible leaders that were voted into office by us. This should not be an us versus them, but we need to use the word we. This is not about any individual preferences from either the Hanahan City Council or the school board, but is about the teamwork needed and required to make this happen. After all, there is no I in team. I am requesting that tonight, you as leaders of the education system in Berkeley County, use those leadership skills and work with Hanahan to get this done. I will also make myself available to both you and Hanahan to make this happen. Thank you for this time, and I will pray that the wisdom of Solomon be granted to you for not only this decision, but all decisions you need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. We certainly appreciate your comments. They were very well written, and we will certainly consider those comments as we move forward. Dr. Thompson, would you like to address the comments?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Healy, for your comments, and I appreciate your passion for getting this school done and finding a solution that meets the needs of everyone. And I can tell you that we are considering all options on the table. Nothing's closed, and we hope to do everything in our power to get this resolved as soon as possible. So hopefully you'll be getting some information very soon about our next steps. And you asked a question at the beginning, where do we go from here? You know, we've got to get back to the drawing board and try to get this resolved. I agree with what you're saying, and we're going to do everything we can to get it done as soon as possible for the children, that a solution that everyone can live with. So thank you for your comments tonight.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Healy. That concludes tonight's citizen comments. We'll move to agenda item number 6, financial services. Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Thompson, you have before you an item for approval for best value bid number 399 for football equipment reconditioning. You have attachment the notice of intent to award and the evaluation rankings, and I ask for your approval to award this to Athletic Reconditioning Incorporated.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. In agenda item number 6, do I have a motion and a second for the approval of BVB 399 football equipment reconditioning?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve BVB 399 for reconditioning and hygiene services for football equipment to athletic reconditioning as presented by Mr. Thomas, Board Agenda 6.
Thank you. Ms. Swaby has made the motion. Mr. Cooper has seconded that motion. Once again, repeating the motion for your consideration before we open it up for discussion. The motion has been made to approve BVB 399 for reconditioning and hygiene services for football equipment to athletic reconditioning, as presented by Mr. Thomas in Board Agenda Item 6. Do I have any discussion regarding Agenda Item 6?
Just got a quick question.
Mr. Obie, go ahead, sir.
For not being a football guru, is this exactly what it sounds? It's just reconditioning the
The
equipment
helmets
as
and
opposed to buying
equipment
new?
for safe, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Obie, you represent Goose Creek High School. You're definitely a football guru.
I know if the Gators had the football, we're supposed to go down the field with it.
Any other questions or comments regarding Agenda Item number 6? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve BVB 399 for reconditioning and hygiene services for football equipment to athletic reconditioning, as presented by Mr. Thomas and Board Agenda Item number 6, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Now up for Agenda Item number 7, Human Resources. Up tonight for Dr. Levine to present is an item for approval. First reading of policies GBED, tobacco-free schools, policy JCDAA, use of tobacco, and policy GBRIA-R, evaluation of instructional staff. Dr. Levine.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Board Chair Murray, other members of the board, Superintendent Thompson. I come to you this evening to recommend a few revisions to the aforementioned policies. For policy GBED, tobacco-free schools, we would like to also include, along with a list of tobacco products, e-cigarettes. For policy JCAA, use of tobacco, we would also like to include e-cigarettes as a form of tobacco product because we know that sometimes they contain certain elements within them, and we know they're not appropriate for our schools. In policy GBIA-R, evaluation of instructional staff, we would like to include in that other state-approved forms of evaluations. Right now, we have only been accepting safety evaluations from across the state, and we do recognize that there are some very excellent other forms of evaluations that are state approved, and we would like to accept them when it is appropriate for us to do so. So at this time, it is the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading for policy GBED, tobacco-free schools, revisions to policy JCDAA, use of tobacco, and policy GBIA-R, evaluation of instructional staff.
Thank you, Dr. Levine. Do I have a motion and a second for the approval of the policies as listed in Agenda Item 7?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading for policy GBED, tobacco-free schools, policy JCDAA, use of tobacco, and policy GBIA-R, evaluation of instructional staff.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Etheridge has made a motion to approve Agenda Item 7. That motion has been seconded by Mr. Obie. I will restate the motion for your consideration prior to discussion. A motion has been made to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the first reading for policy GBED entitled Tobacco-Free Schools, policy JCDAA entitled Use of Tobacco, policy GBIA-R entitled Evaluation of Instructional Staff. Do we have any discussion regarding Agenda Item number 7? Hearing no discussion, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Dr. Levine, all three policies have been approved for the first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to Agenda Item number 8. Dr. O'Gorman, instruction, and accountability. We have an item for action before the board this evening entitled the 5-Year Academy Implementation Plan. Dr. O'Gorman, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Thompson, ladies and gentlemen. We will revisit some content on our academy plan, which was presented back in December. I won't go back through the entire presentation. I'm just going to hit the highlights, if you will. So first of all, this is specific to area focus number 4 in our strategic plan, collaborate with regional partners through an academy model. As you know, Goose Creek High School and Timberland High School are in a pilot phase of implementing the academies this year. They, along with the other high schools, have had an opportunity to create a vision for Berkeley County School District specific to academies. This is what it is. Through teacher collaboration and community support, we will provide rigor and relevance in order to equip our students with the tools necessary for a successful life in the 21st century. So our mission, what we want to accomplish, we want to prepare our students for college and careers through student-centered, small learning communities where relationships are fostered among students, teachers, parents, community, and business partners. And of course, we want our students engaged in relevant interdisciplinary curriculum, career exploration, and workplace experiences that are aligned with high expectations of the 21st century. So here is our 5-year academy plan. We have gone, and this was the first year in terms of putting the rubber to the road and rolling this out in 12-13. I'll remind you that we also discussed the history of the development of this process over the last 4 or 5 years within the greater Charleston area. Of course, in 13-14, as we said, we've got Goose Creek High and Timberland piloting the academies at this point. We've got AAIS they are the architects, if you will, of the academies of Nashville. They are working with most everyone at this point. For 14-15, this plan calls for freshman academies at all high schools. Cane Bay and Berkeley High would enter into a pilot much like Goose Creek and Timberland. And then in 2015 and 16, Cross Hanahan and Stratford would all formally enter this process. I should mention we've asked all high schools to start working towards common planning and focusing on small learning communities as much as possible at this point. And of course, 16-17, our goal is to have a graduation rate of 80% or higher, if possible. So I'm going to leave that up for you to look at. And if you've got any questions for that, I know we've got some principals, members of the Ed Foundation, and of course my staff is in the audience if you have any questions about the presentation we did last time or this evening.
Thank you, Dr. O'Gorman. Before we begin our discussion and questions, we should have a motion on the table. Do I have a motion and a second in regards to agenda item number 8, entitled 5-Year Academy Implementation Plan?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 8 of the agenda, 5-Year Academy Implementation Plan, as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper has made a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration. Mr. Wright has seconded that motion. For the purpose of discussion, please allow me to restate that motion. A motion has been made to approve item 8 of the agenda, entitled 5-Year Academy Implementation Plan, as recommended by administration. The administration, excuse me. Now, discussion. Ms. Lee, the floor is yours.
With the 5-year Academy Implementation Plan, is the schedule, the AV schedule, part of that?
That's correct.
Ms. Lee? Dr. Etheridge.
I guess I missed it before, but the item 2 for 14-15, late arrival, does that replace early dismissal, or what? Explain that. What's that?
The late arrival was one of the requests that the high school principals made to help accommodate for the change, the learning time that teachers need to go into the academy concept. That really goes back to the calendar conversation that you had prior. Dr. Thompson, do you want to?
Yeah, I would like to be sure the late arrival would be approved on the instructional calendar at the February meeting. So we need to strike the late arrival at this point, that it's not part of the 5-year plan until it's approved and it's part of the instructional calendar. Dr. Etheridge, we had a workshop earlier today, and we had some discussion about the instructional calendar and the late arrivals.
Okay. Any additional questions? We still have early dismissal, though.
For the elementary. The discussion.
Mr. Cooper.
The discussion we had on late arrival was what is, as we talked about the calendar and prior to the meeting, was to facilitate for the high schools, because if they have early dismissal, you still have to take care of all those children because they're hanging around for sports and clubs and everything that are after hours. So it'd be much easier for the teachers to participate, because many of them, when we have early dismissal, they can't participate because we have to supervise so many children. So that was tied to high school, but it has not been approved in any calendar.
Okay. So this affects bus routes and
That's
everything.
all part of it.
Well, that's not part of the motion. The question that has been offered to me by the superintendent is, do we need an amendment to the motion? I don't know that we do. But that certainly is the desire of the board. We can amend the motion, but the motion does not discuss delayed arrivals. I don't think it would be pertinent. Ms. Lee.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion. I'd like to make.
How about I withdraw my motion?
Yeah, if you need to withdraw it first.
We'd have to vote on it again if you didn't.
No.
All right, go ahead.
Well, otherwise you have to vote an amendment and amend it.
Absolutely.
How about
I'll
I just-
accept your withdrawal. Mr. Wright?
All right, I second that.
Mr. Cooper, restate that motion, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we approve agenda item 8, 5-year implementation plan, with the stipulation that the late arrival on bullet 2 for 14-15 has yet to be determined and will be determined by the next year's calendar.
That's a long one, Mr. Cooper. I'm challenged down here. Could you restate it for me? We want to make sure we have it recorded in the minutes. Go ahead, sir. You're challenging me this evening.
The 5-year implementation plan be accepted, with the exception that item 2 in 2014-15 schedule, late arrival, has yet to be determined and will be determined when we vote on the 2014-15 calendar.
I believe that was longer than the first, Mr. Cooper. Madam Secretary, were you able to get all of that? Could you restate it for the board?
He did withdraw.
Now,
I just want to clarify.
he did withdraw. He absolutely
And now
did.
this is a new motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Cooper made a motion to approve agenda item 8, 5-year academy implementation plan, with the exception of late arrival, since that will be a part of the board decision related to the calendar.
Correct. All right. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Did we need that restated for the board, or is everyone comfortable? All right. Madam Secretary, you saved me once again. All right, let's continue with the discussion. Are there any comments or questions?
Second that.
Oh, Mr. Wright, thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you. We got a second from Mr. Wright. You two are challenging me tonight. I have a 12-year-old at home challenging me as well.
Questions.
Mr. Wright, thank you. All right, now let's discuss first. Let's continue with the discussion. We have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion, comments, or questions regarding the motion? Ms. Lee.
I still would like to make an amendment to the motion.
Ms. Lee, you are going to challenge me as well. Madam Secretary, are you prepared? Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion to approve the 5-year plan with the exception of the AB schedule. I'd like to have that removed from the 5-year plan as mandatory for all high schools.
Right. Ms. Lee, I can certainly ask the individual who made the original motion as well as the individual who seconded the motion, then we would have to vote on that amendment. Is that my understanding? Does anyone take issue with my position?
Second, though.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Go ahead.
She would need a second, you're correct. Is anyone?
Then you have to call a
Right.
vote on the amendment, and then
Yeah.
then once that is either in or out, then we vote on the final question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do we have a second for Mrs. Lee's amendment?
I second.
Okay, so we do have a second. We may have to pull Robert's Rules of Procedure book out of my book bag. All right, so it's my understanding that we must now vote on Ms. Lee's amendment. Madam Secretary, could you state her amendment one more time, please?
Yes, to approve the 5-year academy implementation plan with the exception of the AB schedule for all high schools.
All right, and we have to vote on that amendment first.
We also may have some question or discussion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do we have any discussion? This is where I get to finally say something. Do we have any discussion regarding Ms. Lee's amendment to approve the 5-year academy plan without the alternative AB schedule change? Do we have any discussion? Mr. Wright?
I would want to know from Doctor, how would that affect anything, the amendment in terms of this particular motion or the academy, the amendment that was made by
Ms. Lee.
By Shannon, I'm sorry.
Right. Again, the AAIS, the American Alliance for Innovative Schools, the folks that designed this system in Nashville have said that the only way they've seen it work across the country where they've implemented it is on an AB schedule, so that content teachers have time to plan and academy teachers have time to plan together. And the only way they've seen that be successful is on that AB schedule. That sticks to the fidelity of the model, if you will.
That answer your question, Mr. Wright?
Yeah, that's my question.
Dr. Etheridge?
Dr. O'Gorman, in your research and everything, have you come across any instances where, as the principals explained, common planning is so necessary and teacher planning is so necessary? Any instances where a schedule is out there other than the AB, considering late arrival and early dismissal and extended day or anything?
We've not seen one where you can consistently provide planning time for both the academy team and the content team, other than the AB. And we've asked AAIS to weigh in on that, to help us with that. We tried to, bend, shape, mold, and they just said that they've done this 1,000 times, and that's the only schedule they've seen where it worked.
And in the academies, every teacher in the high school is involved, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Cooper, comments?
I just want to clarify, because I did sit through a presentation with the principals of Timberland and Goose Creek that are doing some of this, and I think that one of the key things they were talking about was that AAIS was very helpful in the fact that they did struggle because they didn't have that information up front, but that they also thought that planning time and being able to work on that was the only thing that gave them the ability to focus on individual students' progression.
Correct.
And that's why that if we were going to roll out this model, we had to roll out AB schedule with it to provide what we, otherwise we're not going to get the results from that. Is that what I heard that day?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because part of the problem is with the 4x4 block, you've got to have all your core teachers planning together, and you want your math teacher and your science teacher and ELA teacher to share the same students. Under 4x4, those core content classes aren't taught at the same time. They might take English first semester and math second semester, so those teachers don't have time to talk about the same students.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. O'Gorman or for Dr. Thompson? Ms. Swaby?
I would just like to share feedback, just for the knowledge of the board, that I've received from teachers who feel that they are able to focus on individual children. I think sometimes as we look at all of this, I feel like I need to kind of go back myself, even as an educator, and think about the fact that it's easy to get into this all or nothing approach when you're talking about reform efforts like this. And I want to say again, I said it at the last meeting and I'll say it again, I support the concept and the philosophy of all of this. And I also strongly believe that if it is good for students, effective teachers will figure out a way to make it work against odds sometimes, with some unusual things that have come about. I think what has resonated with me from some of the parents and some of the teachers I've heard from, and it's not just from the schools in my area. I think I've heard from people from all of the schools except for probably Cross. But I want us to be really careful about buying into this rigid idea that if we put teachers in rooms and we sit administrators in their PLCs, that's the only way children's needs are going to be met. Because the bottom line is we sit here at these meetings twice a month, and we hear success stories that are going on in our high schools. And they are talking about children, and they are finding ways to plan beyond this structure necessarily. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. However, I do feel that there's enough concern out there, and maybe it's coming from the fact that our high school teachers have been yanked around a lot since I've been on the board, quite frankly. And I'm not proud of a vote or two I made. So I want to go on the record to say we have to be very, very careful about this, and if we are not somehow able to have real honest conversations with teachers and principals, so that they don't feel that this is the next thing down the pipe, and so you can do it now or you can do it later. I think perception is reality, and I think that's something that's living out there, maybe in small ways, I don't know. But it's important enough to me that if we are going to do this right, it really doesn't matter where people are doing it anywhere else, to be honest. If our teachers and our principals don't believe that this is really serving them and helping them do what they're already doing well in our high schools and help them do it better, then I don't feel like we're doing our job to really honor that part of this. And I agree with Ms. Lee about the fact that there has to be a schedule. Teaching on an AB is very, very difficult, and I haven't heard yet any perception data even. I know we don't have hard data necessarily from our two pilot high schools, but when will we? When will we maybe hear some perception data from our teachers so that we know if how they are doing with this? How are these other high schools going to benefit from what they're doing right now to serve students? And how are these teachers able to work more effectively with business partners? I mean, that's written all over this, but I guess for me, I haven't heard enough of that detail yet. And there are parts, especially with the schedule, that I'm on the fence about. And I want to make sure the people in my area who have taken the time to write me and call me know that I am listening and I get it, and it's not easy. Dr. Thompson has said a number of times that you can argue the benefits and challenges of any schedule, and I agree with him. I think that's totally true. The problem is it's your problem to figure out which one is best for us. And I'm not totally convinced that AB is best for every single high school in Berkeley. I'm just not.
Does that conclude your comments, Ms. Waddle?
It does. Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, before we come back to you, was there anyone who has not spoken yet that wanted to take the opportunity? I think Mr. Cooper, go ahead, sir.
I don't know if it's point of order or point of clarification, but the approval was with the exception of bullet 2 as recommended by the administration. I just went back through all of the slides, and nowhere in any of those slides of what was recommended to be approved in that structure did I see block schedule.
Well, that's certainly the answer from Dr. O'Gorman, I believe from Dr. Etheridge, was that it did include alternate AD. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? Ms. Lee.
I did. I also wanted to share, just with the board so that everybody knows, just some of the feedback that I've gotten from parents and students that are currently on the AV schedule. And I don't mean to throw any of our schools under the buses. I fully support our principals and teachers in our schools that are going through this, that are part of our pilot. So please don't think that I'm not supporting that. But the feedback from students and parents that I've gotten is that is very difficult for the students. We have some families that have had to go out and get 2 different book bags, an A book bag and a B book bag. And these are for students that wouldn't normally need any special accommodations, that can normally keep up with their regular schedule, but with the flipping back and forth from A day to B day and A week, B week, or however that happens, it's very difficult for the families, it's very difficult for the students. And I too have heard Dr. Thompson say the same thing, that we can argue the pros and cons of any schedule. And I personally have never been a huge fan of the schedule that we're on right now, the 4x4 block. It's not my favorite. I can see benefits, but I can also see things that are shortcomings for our students. But to me, the AV schedule, it has not been proven to me that this is what is best for our kids. And what it does to our teachers is concerning to me as well. It almost doubles the amount of students that they teach. And I know that on a 4x4 block, they're going to have the same amount of students for the entire year, but they have it broken up. They have it first semester, they have half the kids first semester, half the kids second semester. My concern is that they are now not only changing days, but they have twice the amount of students that they were teaching at one time. That's a lot on our English teachers, for example, that have to go through these research papers, and this is project, a lot of this is project-based learning, and we're writing a lot of papers, and that is concerning to me. Are we going to be able to keep up with this? And for us to have a pilot, we need time on an AV schedule. If we need to keep 2 or 3 or 4 schools on an AV schedule, maybe for a couple of years, but gradually go into this. Maybe we'll have different schedules, for a certain period of time, but to go across the board and say every high school needs to have the same schedule right now when we're in a pilot. If it's a true pilot, we need to figure out if it's actually going to work or not. That is my concern for implementing this entire, the entire academy concept, as well as yet another schedule change. And that was the basis of my amendment.
I've listened carefully. I'd like to take an opportunity to address your amendment, Ms. Lee, of which I will support tonight. I'm very concerned about the learner. I'm also concerned about the teacher. But the learner is now juggling 4 classes per semester. If we go to an alternate AB, that learner is now juggling 8 classes. And I joked earlier that I'm challenged at home by a 12-year-old. I'm not kidding. This is the last one. Once he's gone, it's over. And Mr. Raycroft, I will be in your office with this one. You need to get to know him by name. So I am focused on the teachers. I believe your comments are exceptional, and I agree. But my main concern is the learner. And are children better off focusing on 4 classes or 8? And quite frankly, your story about the book bags just pushed me over the ledge. An A day and a B day book bag. That illustrates my concern. I do support the Career Academy. I do not support the alternate AB. Your amendment may be defeated, Ms. Lee, but what I like about this board is we come to the table, we have our discussion before the people, and we make a decision. And so however it shakes out, I do appreciate you taking the time to consider the learner and the teacher in this decision. I do appreciate that. Any questions or comments? Would anybody like to add to this?
Would it be out of order?
Mr. Wright?
Would it be out of order to hear from teacher forums or the principals that are involved in this policy? I know they are. I'm saying, would we be out of order to have some more discussions or hear from them in reference to what Shannon Lee has said, I'd like to be able to hear from the horse's mouth, if that's okay, if we're not out of order in doing so. Mr. Chair? Dr. Thompson?
Doc, what's your response?
I think in past meetings, we've brought people to the podium for questions. I don't see where that's out of order on Robert's rule.
I guess we could table the motion. We've got an amendment on the table as well. Your thoughts?
One of the things
We could call the amendment and table the question. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Thompson.
comments. One of the things we had talked about making this decision in December. We're up against a critical point in time for high schools where they need to start scheduling students for next year. They've already started the course selection, but they're going to really, they've already should have started building schedules for next year, and if they don't get started within a few days, then they'll be doing a lot of hand scheduling throughout this process, which would cause an extreme workload for administration and counselors at the schools. And as far as building and recruiting teachers, it needs to, the schedule issue needs to get resolved as soon as possible. This has been a 3-year process of we've gone and learning about career academies. The model that we chose was to duplicate a system out of Nashville it's proven successful. And the lady sitting next to me said, I can argue an A-B schedule, a 4x4, a traditional schedule, and tell you the pros and cons of each schedule. The model that we have chosen to follow with the Career Academy, it has to have that opportunity for 2 planning periods for it to be effective according to this model and according to the training that we received. I know that 2 years ago we changed high school schedules for budget concerns, and I'm sympathetic to that. But if we're thinking about our graduation rates have gone from, in 3 years, from 67% to this year 77%. But the last 2 years have kind of been flatlined. They haven't shown a lot of improvement. We're trying to reach that student that needs to be, that is capable and would be engaged when they have that relevance to that career. And we feel confident that we can get our graduation rate over 80%. I know there's a district or regional goal to get to 88%. But we're missing some students with what we're doing now. Our teachers have worked extremely hard, and we've improved our graduation rates. We're doing a better job with tracking what's going on with our students, but we need to get to the next level to get that graduation rate over 80%, and we're missing a percentage of our students because of the relevance piece. They don't understand why they need to learn those linear equations, because it's going to be linked to their career. To run a front-end alignment machine, they need to solve linear equations. So to link that business component and the teachers helping plan and show that relevance and the individualized attention that a group of teachers can give to a student as opposed to just one teacher is powerful, and it's proven powerful in this model in Nashville. That's why, never did I want to go into a career academy model that would change the schedule. But that's how this model works, and the training that we've received on it. That's why we're here to get to this point. So we've got to decide, either we're going to implement this schedule or not, because it's not fair to our high schools to get that far behind the planning process.
Dr. Murray.
We're going to move forward. Ms. Dobie, go ahead, sir.
Now, after all the comments, I do feel compelled to say something.
You have that right.
I am in support of the AB schedule. It is not too different than what the schedule I have when I was back in high school many, many years ago. And also, if we're going to implement this plan, and this is the model we're going after, we got to make sure it's successful before we drown it before it even starts out. So if we start changing schedules around and think we know better than what the model that's already been implemented, then I'm afraid this program might not work. So I think we need to be in support of the model we have now. Once we get all the schools on board and we think we're smart enough that we can adjust the schedule, then we can go from there. But let's stick with the AB schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Obie. I agree. We need to move forward. Mrs. Swaby, go ahead.
Just a last comment. I just want to repeat. It's not the AB schedule necessarily for me. It's the inflexibility.
Okay.
And taking away that, that local control, if you will, for that principal and those teachers. So that's the drum I'll continue to beat on this. And however this goes, I want this board to hold everyone accountable for what a true pilot really means. Because a true pilot doesn't mean you start this and everyone else does it the next year. It means you are testing this, you're having conversations, you're monitoring it. And so we're throwing some language around here, and that's not exactly what we're doing. So I want us to hear as a board, how are we going to know when we've arrived? I really will be happy, and I will be the cheerleader in front for all of you, with every teacher, every parent who talks to me. If someone can help me understand how we're going to know we've arrived. If it's that 80% graduation goal, I still believe strongly we can reach that and not have a single schedule for schools. That's my opinion. That's all it is.
All right. I think all of us, we have reached some disagreement here, but that's okay. We're going to move forward. That's okay. That's why we come to the table to discuss matters. So let's move forward, Mr. Wright, if I have your blessing. We have a main motion that was made by Mr. Cooper and Mr. Wright. Then there was an amendment to that main motion. It is my understanding that we should first entertain the amendment to the main motion. Yep. So to handle this properly, may I please lean on Madam Secretary again and have her repeat the amendment to the main motion.
Yes, Mr. Cooper made a motion to approve the 5-year academy implementation plan with the exception of late arrival, since that will be voted upon at a later date.
And the amendment?
The amendment is to add to that with the exception of the AB schedule required for all high schools.
All right, thank you, Ms. Swaby. You have been the most valuable player this evening. We will first entertain the amendment of the main motion. All those in favor of Ms. Lee's amendment of the main motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I believe I count 3. All those against Ms. Lee's amendment of the main motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the amendment is defeated, 5-3, and I'm okay with that. Now let's deal with the main motion that is on the table. It has been repeated for your consideration. Mr. Cooper was seconded by Mr. Wright to approve the 5-year Career Academy implementation plan with the exception of, what are you calling it?
Late arrival.
The late arrival dates, which will be discussed as part of the instructional calendar. All those in favor of that main motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously, and I thank you for the discussion. All right. Oh, we're going to need those for the later in the meeting. There we go. Moving on to agenda item number 9. Dr. O'Gorman, congratulations. Your item for action, the 5-year academy implementation plan minus the late arrival, has been approved. Agenda item 9, Superintendent's report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Teacher Forum has been working extremely hard in preparation of the 2014 instructional fair on February the 14th. This year's instructional fair will support teachers as they learn best practices and gain additional support in the area of infusing technology into the classroom. So, also, on the eve of the instructional fair, we will host our first ever Parent Summit. The summit has the goal of helping our parents understand how advanced technology is changing the learning environment. So please check our website for more information about these two instructional events that will be taking place on February the 14th and February the 13th for the Parent Summit. The teacher forum, I believe, is located at Cane Bay High School predominantly, and then the Parent Summit will be at Westview Middle School. The third annual Berkeley County Middle School Quiz Bowl will be January the 25th at Sedgefield Middle School. The competition starts at 9 a.m. on the 25th with the award ceremony at 12 o'clock. This is to prepare us for the annual Low Country Quiz Bowl that takes place at Trident Tech, I believe, the first week of March. We're going to get our students tuned up for the Low Country event. So come see the Berkeley County Quiz Bowl on the 25th at Sedgefield Middle School. I'd like to congratulate Howe Hall Elementary School on being named a finalist for the Palmetto's Finalist Award. The visitation team is scheduled to view the dynamic construction at Howe Hall on February the 25th. So we wish Principal Swetke and the staff at Howe Hall all the best during this exciting process. And last item, the Clements Ferry Road School Committee will meet tomorrow, January the 15th at Daniel Island School. And the committee leader will present the results of the committee's work at the January 28th board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for the superintendent's report. Moving to agenda item number 10. Prior to asking for a motion and a second, please allow me to notify those in attendance that tonight's executive session will serve the purpose of the board hearing student expulsion appeals, contractual matters, including a memorandum of understanding with Fox Bank Ventures, as well as Foster Creek Development. Also to hear personnel considerations and legal advice. With that stated, do I have a motion and a second to move into executive session?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Thank you, Ms. Schwabe. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. We stand in it. We move to executive session.